I gave you this newsletter, and I just want to go, I'm not going to read it to you, but I want to just kind of hit the highlights and make sure we have kind of an open discussion on what the curriculum is and where the kids are. So there's some goal setting here, and it's kind of some ideas about biology and where we are in the curriculum. Again, I don't want to read it to you. You guys can read it. I think it's pretty good and pretty self-explanatory, but if you have any questions, please feel free to our objective, my objective with this in school is to get your kids ready to go to college, right? So there's kind of three main objectives. Number one, get them passed in the class, let them understand biology, pass the EndofCourse exam, and lastly, get them ready for the ACT and get scholarship money. And those are the big objectives. And there's that whole idea, and it's well documented, the transition from middle school to high school is quite difficult sometimes. Then when we look at where are we in the curriculum, and we'll look a little bit more about what the curriculum entails, is we look at, where we're going to start now is cells and cell membranes. Where we just finished are these biomolecules. And your kids took a test last week. A lot of kids didn't do well. Some kids did well. I think Jabari scored the highest in the ninth grade. He got 90 out of 100, so that was pretty good. But the issue is that a lot of kids didn't do well, so we made that into a practice test, and there'll be another test on Wednesday. It still counts, but on Wednesday you'll have another chance, and Jabari can have his chance to go to 100%. Now, like most tests, in my class, if students want to retake the test, they can, but they have to come in and do remediation first. So let's say he scored a 40 on the exam. He could come after school one day, figure out what went wrong, let me explain it to him, and then he could retake that exam some other day after school or on a Saturday, or even that same day if there's time. So those are all tests and all work in this class up to 1 week before the end of the quarter, because I won't be able to do that when I'm putting in grades. So again, you could read this on your own. It's in a newsletter. You guys, I know you just came in, but you can grab that stuff on the way out and sign up. You don't have to worry about it too much. So you can read this and take a look at it and kind of what is the emphasis of the class and why we have to write me in it. So here you have, this is kind of where we are in the curriculum, and one of the things I wanted to point out was this. This is where we just finished. This is their big exam that they just took, and we made into a practice exam. And this is what they're going to take another exam. They're actually going to retake that exam again on Wednesday. This is the kind of stuff they have to know. And I drew this out so that people know that could you do me a favor and turn the lights off so your parents might be able to see better? Oh, thank you. So this kind of stuff, you need to know it, and I know it seems kind of crazy that kids are learning about lipids and nucleic acids and their structures and such and things like that. But if they don't understand this, it's going to be hard for them to understand the cell membrane and how organelles work, and then how the metabolism work, how does cellular respiration work, how does photosynthesis work. If they don't understand these kind of basic molecules, it's going to be hard to have a discussion post that. We do. Here's some information on this page on field trips and why we do field trips and why we chose to do some of the field trips. They really don't have much to do with biology. Things like the astrology lab that we put together, the anatomy camp that's coming up. It's technically not on the EndofCourse exam, but I don't see us not taking advantage of having a medical school across the street and the medical school choosing to open their doors to them and letting them see like human organs and talking about those kind of things. I mean, I just think it would be criminal for us not to take advantage of that. So it's one day after school and then 1 day during school. So we're taking a bunch of kids each day. Okay, and you guys here, this page in your handout talks about field trips, the two different field trips we're planning to anatomy camp, and kind of my logic about having field trips that are not really pertaining to the EndofCourse exam, which we'll talk about in just a minute. There is no anatomy on their EndofCourse exam. It's not in our curriculum. But I think it's a shame not to take advantage of the fact that Case Western Reserve Medical School is across the street, and they're willing to take the kids on and show them human organs. I said, wow, I wish I would have had that opportunity when I was in high school. And so I said, let's do it. So we're doing 2 different field trips. One is in the afternoon, so it won't interrupt their classes. The other one's during the day. Only 75 kids can participate, 50 on the second day and 25 on the first. So if your kids are interested in going, of course, you as parents can come too as chaperones if you've never seen human organs or you want to know more about anatomy. You're more than welcome to come along with your children. There's some other stuff here about some of the field trips I'm planning, some of the things I'd like to do. Some of it, again, you can read that on your own. This is kind of the biggest problem I think that 9th graders have, and that's why I kind of wrote a whole page on it there, or not really a page, but a few paragraphs, and I quoted this article. This article is just one of many articles that kind of document the issues that a lot of our students have. They come from middle school. They're really smart kids. That's granted. I mean, I haven't given anyone an IQ test, but I couldn't imagine anyone is more than a point or two, one way or the other, of each other in the 9th grade. I'm sure there's a genius somewhere, and I'm sure, they're the other way as well, but realistically, most 9th graders are about the same intelligence. The difference between success in high school is how hard they work and their preparation before they came in. If they were well prepared in middle school, then there's less work for them in high school. But if they work hard, they pretty much do well. When I say work hard, we'll talk a little bit about that. That's those blue sheets and what kids, and I'll share with you some of the comments that some of the kids made to me. Well, I guess I'll share with you now. On those blue sheets, what we have is, your kids should have one every week in their binder. And what the blue sheets are is a breakdown of this word study. The word study, kids are just used to saying, I studied. And you ask them, did you study? They'll say yes. And generally what they mean by studying is that they read the notes, or they read the book, and they read it 4 or 5 times, and they figured they got it. Or they listened in class, and they understood it. And see, that's where that intelligence part comes in, where they understood it in class because they're smart. They got it. And then they go home and they read it in class at home, and they understood it. That's fine. But then they walk on a test, and a lot of times they underperform on exams. And the reason they're underperforming on exams is they didn't get it home to the point where under stress they're able to perform, right? So it's like in a football game or NFL game or a professional baseball game, they practice, so they know when they're in the middle of a game and they're under stress, they're able to perform at their peak. And so what I did is I broke this word study down into these objectives. And by the way, if you guys need to go somewhere, need to go to another class, this is kind of very informal. Ms. President really want us to set any kind of schedules so you guys can come and go, and almost everything is written down there in writing as well. And if you have questions, of course, if you want to have an individual conference as well, we have a sheet to sign up for individual conferences. So again, the idea is with those blue sheets is to take that work and say, okay, show me what you're doing. Show me that you're reciting your vocabulary, that you're revising your notes. Show me that you're having a study group session where you're quizzing each other on the material, and they can do this during advisory or they can do it after school. Now the problem comes in that kids don't want to do it. One of the kids came up to me and said, well, I'm confused. And I said, well, okay, what are you confused about? I said, well, I don't understand how to use those study sheets, those blue sheets. And I said, well, did you watch the video? I made a whole 1-hour video of going through and filling it out and showing them examples. And they said, well, I don't understand how to use them, and I don't understand your video either. I said, well, what don't you understand specifically? And she says, well, this index card stuff. I said, yeah, that's just standard. You put the definition. I started to describe it. She says, oh, I know what it is. I just don't use them. I said, well, okay, well, you can rewrite the notes, or you can quiz each other. There's a lot of ways you can recite the information. You don't have to do it just with index cards. You can use Quizlets. There's like 100 different ways of doing it. She said, well, I don't understand. I don't do that stuff. And I said, well, what about, the reading? Do you do the reading section? I don't read. I don't read for the chapters. I don't do that. And so, at that point, you kind of get this, and after having a conversation with her, I found, that she just got used to in middle school, listening in class, taking a test, passing the class. That's what a lot of smart kids do in middle school. You can't do that in high school because the questions are more than just, what the definition, here's the word, here's the definition, match them, or whatever they got in middle school. They have to apply the knowledge. And all the questions on my exams, on the tests, are all designed after the end of course exam and the ACT. So they're all, here's a graph, interpret it. Here's a question, here's a scenario, how would you solve this problem knowing what you know? And so it's that kind of question where it's not something that is more just, memory, it's more application. Does that make sense? All right, so that's kind of the issue there with being hard work versus being smart. And there's an article there you could look up, and it's really a fantastic article that I read, and I thought I'd share with you. It has directly related to curriculum, some isn't. Then this one here, this page, talks about kind of the transition to high school, and that's something that one of the parents and I were just talking about. The transition to high school is tough, and part of the reason that it's been made tougher is our situation that we're in as high schools in the state of Ohio, but in just about every state in the union. What we're facing in these end of course exams, and in New York they call it the Regents exams. It kind of limits our ability to be more relaxed. There isn't really a lot of room for relaxation, and the reason is that we have to hit some target benchmarks, or your kids won't be ready to take that end of course exam, and they have to pass that end of course exam in order to graduate high school, or at least a certain number of them, and I'll explain that to you in a little bit. If you've been to Miss Simpson's class already, so you've heard her say that, I think 4 and 3 or something like that. I'm not sure about it. I just know about biology. I don't know about the other classes, but there's this thing that happens to kids when they're in middle school. What happens is that a lot of us, we're all guilty of it. You're smart, and the kids are used to getting A's, and they're kind of coasting. It's like they're roller skating down a hill, and then when they get to high school, it's like they hit tar, right? And they're just like, oops, right, what happened? And they have this kind of, and that's that whole idea of transition to high school. It's well studied. It happens everywhere in the world as far as we can tell. It's just going from middle school to having more rigid, rigorous requirements in high school is just a real shock to the system. Kids that have never gotten anything less than an A on a test, all of a sudden they're getting C's or even an F, and they're just like, oh my God, what is happening here? I'm in trouble. I give up. I'm done. And that happens sometimes, and we don't want that to happen. And so this article is written in Psychology. You can look it up here. I just quoted a little bit of it. It's an interesting phenomenon, this transition to high school. It's one of the reasons that I decided to take that test and make it into a practice test and allow them to retake tests and allow them to resubmit all their work until the end of the week before the end of school. All that is there because I know how hard it is to transition from middle school to high school. I understand that this is new to most people. In fact, their notebooks are the same way. A lot of their notebooks, they have these blue sheets that they hate doing, and we'll talk about what those blue sheets are and why they hate doing it in a minute. I'll give you a quick example about the blue sheets. One of the things the blue sheet asks you to do, and you have a copy of them, is they ask the kids to, during your study group session, and it could be on your own. It doesn't have to be with another person. Your study time can be on your own. I want to say first, I don't like the word study because your kid tells you they studied, or they tell me they studied. What did you do? What does that mean, right? Everybody has a different answer. Some kids will tell you they read the chapter or they read the notes. I read the notes. I paid attention in class. I read the notes. That may not be good enough, right? I mean, you have to break it down. What exactly does it mean that when you say you're studying? And so that blue sheet, what it does is it breaks it down. You show me, what exactly are you doing? And I had this conversation with this young lady, and she said to me, I don't understand these blue sheets. I said, well, okay, you don't understand them. What do you mean you don't understand them? I don't get it. And she says, well, I just don't understand what you mean by recite. I don't do index cards. I said, well, you don't have to do index cards. You can rewrite your notes. You can You can do practice problems. You just have to show me what you're doing. I want to know exactly what you're doing so I can have a conversation with you. So because I know you're coming from middle school, I know you're going to high school, I want to know what is it that you're doing right or wrong. If you score bad on an exam, we can have an intelligent conversation on how we can improve what you're doing. And she says, well, I just don't do index cards. I don't do that. I'm like, okay, well, what about your reading? Because another section in that blue sheet, they had reading. They had one chapter read, 1 month, one chapter. And they had notes too, but they had like 2 sets of notes. But one chapter, they had to read and answer some questions. It was an ebook, it's a PDF, everybody got it, everybody said they can open it. She says, I don't read. I said, what do you mean you don't read? I don't read the chapters. I'm not going to do that. I said, well, and why is that? Why is the kid telling me that? And the reason I think, and we didn't get to any more detail other than that, is I think what's happening is they come from middle school where they pay attention in school, right? They're in class, they pay attention, take some notes, they review their notes, they take their test, they get an A, right? It's 8 years of doing that, right? 8 years. And then all of a sudden they get to high school, here's this big guy telling them they got to actually read the chapter, take notes, and they're like, whoa, I don't want to do that. And so, I understand the mentality, don't get me wrong. I mean, hey, I'm as lazy as the next guy, right? I'm not going to say, well, this kid is, there's something wrong with this kid. The kid is normal. That's a normal thing. That's why we need the blue sheets. We want to make sure that they're doing the work and that they're actually doing, when they say study, that means they're doing actually something that is getting them ready for their exams. I mean, that's the whole point. So the blue sheets are a little bit of work. Most of the kids that have successfully done it, they do it in advisory. They sit down, they do it. The group stuff, they don't need to fill out the group stuff. So they can do all the individual stuff on their own. But they have to record what they're doing, and I have to be able to read it so I can, and I told them, if they have index cards, you say you're doing index cards, where are they? Let me see them. If you're saying you're doing Quizlet, write down what the Quizlet is. I need to see the Quizlet because I want to know that you're doing it right. I need to see the definitions. So again, this is my way of trying to help your kids make sure they're doing the right thing as far as the word study. I don't like the word study because it doesn't mean much, or it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So now the end of course exams, this is something some parents know about, other parents don't know about, and I'm just going to summarize again. You have the details in the handout, and for those parents that aren't here, I'm going to email the documents to them as well. So the test, the end of course exam, there's 5 possible scores. Limited and basic are considered what most people would call failing. Proficient means that if you score a 3, the goal is to score a 3. If they scored a 3 on all of the exams, they get more than 18 points. So they'd be able to graduate. They have to get 18 points on all their exams, but they only have 7 exams. So if they scored a 2 on all their exams, they only get 14 points. They don't graduate. If they go score 2 on most of their exams and go score a 3 on one, they still don't graduate. So they really got to get an average of about 3 on each exam. It's a decimal point, but what have you, about a 3. My objective, and this is I think the objective of all the teachers, you can talk to them, is I would say what we're shooting for is your kid to get a 5, because if they score a 5 here, and then that takes the pressure on them when they get later on in high school. The material in 9th grade is probably a lot more straightforward than it will be in 10th grade, and a lot more straightforward than it will be in 11th grade. And to the strategy of waiting and taking an AP course and trying to get a 5 on an AP course to get those 5 points is not, I don't think it's a solid strategy. I think it's a much better strategy to, now you're in honors biology, we can get you a 5. And by the way, last year, the year before, we had only one kid not get a 3. About 60% of the kids got a 5 or 4 or 5. Last year, about 60% of the kids got 4 or 5, and only one 9th grader that was here throughout the year didn't get a 3. So that's kind of, it's been a pattern so far this year. So it seems like the curriculum is working. It seems like the material is getting into their heads and they're able to be successful in the long run. Okay, so That's the goal, is to get that EO. All right, let's talk a little bit about the end of course exams. I think if you come from Ms. Simpson, she talked enough about it, but if you haven't been to Ms. Simpson, she has a nice little breakdown about what kids need. There's this idea that's going around with a lot of kids. It's like, look, so I score a 2 on, let me break this down for you really quickly. There's basic and there's limited. If they score a 1 or a 2, that's how most of us would consider not passing, right? So that's kind of a fail. Obviously, the words basic and limited seem like it's lower level, right? So if they're at this level, then their understanding of biology isn't that great. Once they score a 3, they're considered proficient. The state of Ohio says, okay, they've learned enough to be okay. And they have to take 7 exams, and if you think about it, 7 times 3, the 7 times 2 is not enough to graduate, because they only have 7 exams. So 7 times 3, really that's what the state wants. They want you to take at least 3 on all your exams, and they only have 7 exams in order to get those 18 points. Look, your kids can have straight A's, and I can give them all A's, but if they don't pass this test with a 3 or better, or at least 18 points worth of tests, they're not graduating high school. So, that's a real big thing. And then, and on top of that, and this is something that we kind of forget a lot of times because we're so fixated on the end of course exam and the grade and the class, kind of the big objective is to get them to do well on the ACT, because we want them to get money or graduation. There's so many opportunities for them. There's a $500,000 scholarship that they give every year to a kid from this school. They have I think the Case Western Reserve now is saying anyone in Cleveland, if they score a certain score on the ACT, they can go to Case for free. I mean, these are real big opportunities for kids, but they have to get that ACT score. So there's kind of 3 goals, right? 1, understanding biology, getting a good grade in biology so your GPA is high. That's important. But then, passing the end of course exam so you can graduate, right? That's important. And then getting your ACT scores, and getting those ACT scores started really in kindergarten, but it's just part of that progression towards getting a good ACT score once they get there. Okay, so that's kind of the 3 big goals, the end of course exam, and this kind of goes into some of the alternative ways of getting it. As you can see here, you can instead of passing end of course exam, you can pass the AP exams or the international. We don't have this, so this doesn't apply to us. This is not an international baccalaureate school, but it is an advanced placement school. So we do have a lot of AP courses. If they get a 4 or 5 in the particular subject areas, they can also replace that 4 or 5 in their end of course exam. But again, thinking of strategy, why would you want to bet your graduation on an AP exam instead of trying to get that 5 on an end of course exam? Does that make sense? I mean, this is a regular honors biology class. Get it here. Don't wait till AP biology to try to get the 5. It's much more difficult. And of course, you have to get them and I don't know the details, but you can look it up at the Ohio Department of Education. They go and they have a breakdown how many of these graduation points you got to get in English and in math, and they combine social studies and science. And I think
4, and 6. We were just in Mrs. Simpson.
Ms. Simpson will break it down. Great. All right. So 4, 4, and 6 is, I think, the breakdown. So there is an alternative way of doing it, and again, I don't understand the logic for some people. They say, well, you know what? I'm not going to worry about my honors biology end of course exam. I'm going to take an AP exam and I'm going to score a 3, 4, or 5. How does that make sense? The AP exam is twice as hard as the end of course exam. Why would you not focus on getting the points now and then worry about getting your AP score high later? That doesn't make sense to me. And by the way, if they can't score a 3 on end of course exam, it's going to be harder for them to do well on the AP biology exam because they didn't learn the stuff they need to learn in honors biology. So that's kind of why we have to take that pace the way we do. And let's take a look at. So now let's get on to what this test looks like in biology. And again, I'm not going to read all this detail to you, but I just wanted to give you an idea of the scope of this test. The test covers everything from heredity, which includes cellular genetics, very detailed molecular biology, structure and function of DNA in the cells, again, replication, what are genes, how do you make proteins, transcription, translation, all that. The genetic mechanisms of inheritance include things like population genetics, mutations, modern genetics, which goes into what kind of cloning and, you know, other types of molecular work. So that's about 28% of the test. Now, I'm going to leave it here, heredity. You can look at the rest of the breakdown, because what I did is I said, okay, let's take a look at heredity. Let's see what it is that you have to learn in order to be able to get this 28% on that test. You know, what is on that exam, right? So what's on that exam is this is kind of a breakdown by percentage, 23 to 28% all across the board. I want to focus on heredity, and I just want to focus on just a couple little things on heredity. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. You guys can look at it. I think I gave you copies of everything, or at least you'll have copies of this video anyways. And you can go on the Ohio Department of Education. You can take a look at it, and the kids will go on later and take practice exams on the website as well. So in any case, there's a lot, you can see there's a lot of content. It's very broad. It goes all the way from molecular biology and covalent bonds and polar bonds and osmosis and et cetera, all the way down to, you know, ecosystems and population genetics and, you know, doing chi-square and all kinds of kind of broad topics. So it's really broad. So when we look at the content, heredity is broken up into kind of these four things, and it's in depth. And so you can see, again, here's a nice little breakdown of all the content. I got all this from the Ohio Department of Education, so if you want to go look at it. But I wanted to focus on heredity for one reason, and that's this part here. And it says building on knowledge in elementary school, right? And it says offspring resemble parents' knowledge from middle school. So here's the problem with this, and this whole thing talks about all the knowledge that the kids should have gotten in middle school and elementary school. Based on the polling that I've done with the kids, what they're telling me is that some of the kids didn't get any science in middle school or elementary school. Their school didn't have a teacher, they had a sub. So now we got to go back and we got to get that middle school stuff that they need, right? Because the state says, this is what the state says. It says that they should have done that in middle school. That should be done. Don't do it. Don't do it in high school, because you don't need to do it because they have it already. But they don't have it. So they have to learn it here. And so that's why the kids feel so crammed up. For instance, just this week we were covering, not this week, but this past month, we covered the atom and covalent and ionic bonds. The state says they should know that. They should understand the basic ideas of the atom. But you ask my students, they have no idea. They don't understand the difference between an atom and a molecule. So we had to start from scratch, and a lot of times that's what we have to do. We have to start from scratch, rush and catch up, and then kind of expand on that. And it's unfortunate, but I mean, what choice do we have, right? I mean, the test is the test. They're not changing the test for us.
So how has that affected previous classes when you have to do something like that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. That's a really good way of looking at it. What have we done in the past? How well have we done in the past by doing this? And I pretty much have done the same thing not exactly the same thing, but the same strategy in all 3 years. The first year we did it, we had one kid not get a 3. Everybody else got a 3 or above. 60+% of the kids got 4 or 5 on the test. About 33% 5s and 33% 4s. Last year, one 9th grader that was here all year, there was one kid that wasn't here for whatever reason, but the other one kid that was here all year long didn't get a 3. The rest of them got 3 or above. 60% got 4 or 5. About 33% 5, 33% 4. So that's kind of where we've been at the last couple of years. So the process of catching up, catching up, and doing it does work. You know, getting the work done, studying, working hard, going over the practice problems, explaining it, listening to the videos. What we've been doing has been working. But you know, some of the parents feel like, well, it's a lot of work. You know, my kid's tired. They're going to sleep at midnight. You know, you guys got to take it easy on them. I said, well, that might be true, but if you look at the grade book, I've given 5 assignments this quarter that they had to do outside the classroom. The notes, you might see a 2-hour video that I send to the kids. The 2-hour video is just what we did in the classroom. So if they were in class and they took notes in class, then they should be able to, you know, not necessarily watch a 2-hour video. I mean, it would be ridiculous. I don't expect them to watch a 2-hour video. I just have it there for them to reference. Does that make sense? So realistically, I don't think it's that much work for me, for my class. I know that you know, together it's a lot, And I know that, especially if maybe you didn't have a social studies teacher in middle school, or you didn't have a good one, and now you have to catch up on that, you might have a lot of work to do, it's true. But I don't know what the answer is to that. I know we have Saturday schools for you, and for the kids, like this Saturday, I'll be here 8 to 12. We can do retakes, we can do tutoring. I'm here every day after school as well. So if the kids need tutoring, I'm here after school to do that. So again, a lot of this stuff, I want to say about 1/3 of the stuff that we covered this month is stuff that they should have gotten in middle school, according to the state, right? This is an example. We haven't done heredity, but this is an example. All right. And then here it says, where there's a stimulus, these are the kind of things that they have to be able to do. And I've looked at this, I've looked at the whole thing. It's like 300 pages long. I've read the whole thing, highlighted it, and the curriculum's kind of designed behind that, what the state says is going to be on that end of course exam. Where is it, the one they say don't do? All right, so there it is. It says, do not assess this. You see that? And why do they say don't test this? They say don't cover it, don't assess it, because this stuff should have been covered in 8th grade. And most kids have seen it in 8th grade, but about 1/3 of the kids haven't seen it. And so the kids that haven't seen it in 8th grade, what do they have to do? They have to catch up. So there's this rush, and I think I gave you a copy of this, but if I didn't, I'm gonna email you a copy. But you can look it up on the Ohio Department of Education as well. Yes, question.
For summer homework, you had gave us like a bunch of like kind of thing. We had to take notes on heredity.
Yeah.
So are we gonna still go over heredity, or does that
Absolutely, yeah. The Khan Academy heredity, that was the stuff they should have gotten in 8th grade, because I know that that's one of the things that after doing this 2 years, trying to get kids ready for the course exam, I know that a lot of kids don't get that monohybrid, dihybrid crosses. And so I had you do that for summer work. Those are kids that have been here for Step Up. They were asked to do that summer work to kind of review that stuff. And I picked 2 topics. I could have picked 100 topics, but I picked 2 topics that I know kids have trouble with when they start off in biology. It's a great question. We're recording this so I can send it to parents. And then, okay, so I just want to check off that we talked about this stuff. We talked about the blue study logs, and you also have in front of you how I'm grading the notebooks. And so by the way, again, I know some of you walked in a little later than others, and please feel free to come and sit down. You don't have to stand there. It feels but there's that blue sheet log. A lot of the kids complain about it. As I said, it's really about making sure that they're doing the right thing. And that's how I'm going to give them points, is just to get them to do the right thing. But how I'm grading those logs and how I'm grading that notebook's right there as well on that sheet. And your kid will get their own personalized one with their breakdown, and they're going to sign off on it, and they'll understand when I collect the notebooks again, what I expect to see is growth from that position to where I collect them at the end of the quarter. And again, notebooks, for the most part, a lot of the work is done in class, but they do have to do work at home, or during their advisory period where they have to recite. They have to practice this stuff. They have to quiz each other. The notebook is kind of key in my class, and one of the reasons it's a key is because, look, so let's say your kid's smart, and I want to say this clearly. I don't think there's and I haven't seen any of their IQ scores, but I can't imagine an IQ score anyone having better or worse than anybody else. A few points here or there, but there might be a genius or someone who's not a genius, but for the most part, everyone's about the same intelligence. It's really about how hard they work and what they're doing to be successful. I mean, that's what it is. And when you're looking at the notebook, and by the way, listen to your kids, because some of the kids have told me, I'm just not smart enough to do this. This is not me. And here's the thing, they are smart enough to do it. They're telling you that because they're more like me than they're like, they just don't want to do it. I get it. I don't want to do it either. But you have to get the work done, and you can figure it out. And even if you don't understand, you can figure these things out. They can. It's possible. The notebook, though, the reason it's so key in this class is stuff they're learning now in August and September, they got to know it in May. And so if they're not taking good notes and they're not reviewing, they're not keeping their work, then how are they going to be prepared in May? I'm going to give them review sheets. I'm going to give them packets and review. But they're just going to have to redo everything by the end of the year? That doesn't make sense. So keeping a good notebook is really important for the year. Then the test design questions. Another thing the kids like to say is your test questions are so hard. All my test questions are designed after the end of course exam. I look at the end of course exam practices, I'm like, oh, that's what they like to ask, oh, that's how they want to phrase it, and I phrase it in that way. I do, for instance, choose all that apply. Kids hate that one. They hate it. Ask them. Because it's not like A, B, C, D, choose one. That's easy. I can choose one. But there might be 3 right ones. There might be only 1. There might be 4. You don't know. So it's difficult. Hey, I sympathize. Listen, when I was in high school, they didn't even have half this stuff, right? I mean, I graduated in 1985. I don't remember, I didn't learn half this material that they have to learn. I feel for your kids. I really do. But it's what the state wants. So anything else we say, no matter how we feel, it has to get done. So that's the test design. And I think that pretty much wraps it up. I just want to say that, again, just because I know some of us came in at different times, I want to emphasize that the kids can resubmit any of the work that they've done and they've not passed. So if they messed up something, they can resubmit it and I'll regrade it as long as they've improved it. With any test, they can retake it. And we were just talking earlier with the earlier group about the practice test versus the actual test and when can they retake it. They can come after school, we figure it out, I give them a tutoring session, the same day or the next day they can take that exam or take that paper home and rewrite it and resubmit it. I'll regrade it all the way up to 1 week before the end of school. Now, why is that an issue? I had a kid today come to me and say, email me, send a message through Jupiter Grades, and she said, listen, I submitted something on August 8th, and I just noticed that it's missing. Well, I had to do a double take, because how are you just noticing if something's missing from being something submitted on August 8th? The only answer is you're not looking at Jupiter Grades. And if you look at those blue sheets, one of the things I ask the kids to do weekly is to look at Jupiter Grades and write down their assignments, what grade did they get, and are they satisfied with it? And by the way, just one more thing, if there is a problem with a grade, I encourage your students, and I do it in class, I'm doing it now in front of you, I encourage them to come and see me during advisory. They can get a pass and see me. I can't tell you how many issues that we've corrected, sitting down next to each other, looking at the grades, saying, okay, go look in that pile, go look over here. They find it, oh, I didn't put my name on it. Oh, I put the wrong date on it. Oh, I put the wrong assignment label on it, or whatever. Or I made a mistake, I've made mistakes. Oh, let me correct that. So we can do it. They have to come and see me. That's not a problem. My door's always open. After school, I'm here almost every day, unless I have a meeting or my wife needs the car. And during advisory, they have an advisory period. They're more than welcome to come here during advisory. We can correct any issues, especially if it's something like you didn't put this in, here it is. Oh, okay, boom, I put it in. It's not a big deal. Then one last thing, just you have around the room, if you want to look around, and we'll turn the lights on, but there's student work up on the board. And if you look at that giant pile of papers over there, one is a smaller pile of unused blank copies. The other is this giant pile of work that kids have not come and collected. It's all graded, as far as I know. I mean, there could be some mistakes, but all has been graded and put in the grade book. But no one comes and collects it. And then a month later, they come and say, well, where is it? I'm like, did you get your work? You know, you encourage your children to get their work after it's been graded. And the kids have passed it out in every class. Some people have taken it, some people left it behind, some people have never gotten it because they weren't here. So all the work's back there, and if I make a mistake, I always correct it. At the very worst I'll do is put an excuse, and that means it doesn't impact the kid's grade at all, so I mean, that's not bad. All right? All right, you're welcome. And if you guys have any suggestions, you can Jupiter Grade message me and let me know that you have a suggestion on how I might improve things, what I can do to make things easier for your kid. Yeah. Well, we can sit down now and fix it if there's not another group coming. Well, let's sit down. Let's figure it out. All right, guys. What's up? How you doing?
How are you?
All right. Hey, I'm gonna turn the lights on real quick. Yeah, most of them. The ones on the right are graded. The ones on the left are not. So if you want to see your grade, you can look here and see if they've been graded.
Yeah, I'm not